I have a question for you. Do you think courage is something that is innate to a person, or is it something you can train up on? This true story about a very unlikely hero might make you rethink your answer. Before David Bellavia enlisted, he said, quote, "I was once considered the weakest link. I was the son that had to be sheltered and protected," end quote. He was born in 1975 in Buffalo, New York, and by the time he's in his early 20s, he was completely lost in life. Jobs weren't working out, college wasn't for him, so he's living at his parents' house, unsure of his future, when an incident happens that changes his life forever. So his parents' house gets robbed by a couple of crackheads. He ran downstairs to try to grab his father's shotgun, but when he picked it up, he realized he had no idea how to use the shotgun. So then he grabbed a baseball bat, he ran back upstairs, and he was gonna fight off the intruders, but he realized he didn't really have it in him, and he was frozen in fear as the two robbers ransacked his home. He knew in that moment that he needed to turn his life around. He decided what he needed to do was go down and enlist as a regular infantry grunt, hoping that the army could be the positive change in his life that he was looking for. Bellavia is deployed with the 2nd Battalion, 2nd Infantry Regiment, 1st ID, and they're stationed outside Fallujah. At this point, he's a squad leader, responsible for the lives of his soldiers. They were already engaged in months of fierce close quarters fighting. Bellavia was no longer bothered by fear. He was fueled by it. By this time, he had transformed into a reliable leader. The Second Battle of Fallujah that Sergeant David Bellavia was about to participate in would be one of the bloodiest battles involving American troops since the Vietnam War. There were at least 4,000 enemy insurgents in the city that the US military would have to contend with. This enemy force had had months to prepare the city's defenses in advance of the attack. His platoon was tasked with searching and clearing houses in Fallujah. When they approached the infamous house, Sergeant Bellavia stayed outside and looked through the window so he could see if any enemies were going to try to shoot at his platoon when they entered. And his platoon began clearing the house, and they took intense enemy fire. Bellavia couldn't see where the enemy position was from outside the house, so he sprinted inside, and he quickly realized just how bad the situation was. The two enemy insurgents were entrenched behind a staircase. They're hiding behind a half-ton concrete Jersey barrier. One of them has an AK-47 and the other has a belt-fed PKM machine gun. Sergeant Bellavia is really kind of impressed at how prepared the enemy kill zone is. They're not dealing with amateurs here. Several of his platoon are already wounded at this point, and the insurgents are mocking them in English. But this was a huge mistake. All it did was serve to piss him off. And Bellavia's best friend, Sergeant Fitz, was across the hall, and he could see that he was bleeding. When he looked at Fitz, he saw on his face that it was the closest he'd ever seen to his buddy being actually scared. And seeing that almost unnerved him for a second. But he had to hide it because he knew if his squad saw even a hint of fear in him, then they would be done for. It was the perfect ambush, and they were right in the kill zone. The walls separating his squad from the enemy gunfire was slowly getting chipped away by the 7.62 rounds. He knew once those walls broke, they would be massacred there. And this is one of those moments soldiers have faced for thousands of years. Momentum and fear in a battle can change everything. He recognized they would all be dead soon if someone didn't do something. He knows he can't throw a grenade in there because they could throw that grenade back. He knows they can't flank the enemy position because they're indoors and all entryways are cut off. So what he does is unbelievable. He has one of his teammates go and grab an M249 saw with a 200 round drum. And he tells his platoon to peel out and leave on his mark. And what he does is he steps out, directly exposes himself. He entered straight into the fatal funnel of the room and he starts firing. He goes cyclic with the M249. And he expects them to shoot him right away because they've got the drop on him. But they're completely caught off guard and surprised by this insanely bold move that he pulls off. And this allows his platoon to break contact and exit the house to safety so they're able to tend to the wounded. Bellavia's shooting with the saw. He's keeping the enemy's heads down behind the Jersey barrier. And he forced the enemy to take cover. he knows that there's still a threat inside the building, and he needs to clear that out. So while everyone else is getting to safety, Bellavia eliminates another enemy with an RPG in the building. He wounds another insurgent who retreats into the darkness of the house. Sergeant Bellavia decides to charge into the house alone. He had no idea if he would make it out alive. All he knew was he needed to neutralize the threat to his fellow soldiers. He exchanges gunfire in a bedroom on the first floor with one of the enemies when a third enemy comes downstairs and confronts him. At this point, the second wounded insurgent comes back into the room and Sergeant Bellavia eliminates him. The insurgent from the bedroom just barely escapes upstairs and he charges up after him, not knowing how many enemy are up there. He tosses a grenade into the room where the enemy fled to. And when he looks inside the room, he sees there's propane tanks and explosives everywhere. He puts his rifle down to avoid blowing the whole place sky high. Then suddenly the enemy jumps down from the rooftop onto him. From the citation quote, "Hearing the two insurgents screaming from the third story of the building, Bellavia put a chokehold on the wounded insurgent to keep him from giving away their position. The wounded enemy then bit Sergeant Bellavia on the arm and smacked him in the face with the butt of his AK-47, end quote. Bellavia was able to pull out his knife and eliminate the enemy insurgent. At this point, 5 members of the platoon entered the house and took control of the building. Soon after that, air support arrived and his division left the area. Actions on that day are credited with saving the lives of his entire squad. Originally, his actions earned him the Silver Star, but on June 25, 2019, the President of the United States retroactively awarded him the Medal of Honor, making him the first living Iraq War veteran to receive it. Listen to this part of his amazing acceptance speech.
"We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We've seen war. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters."
So no, I don't think a soldier is born with courage. I think they can find it along the way. He stepped into that role. He was able to fill those shoes. And he learned the skills that he needed to get where he wanted to be in life. And to me, that's an inspiration. I hope you guys like the story. Please share this video with someone you know that might like it as well. And if you look at what he's done since he's gotten out of the Army, he's done nothing but advocate for veterans. He's been called the Audie Murphy of our generation for a really good reason. And he's just an unapologetic Iraq War veteran. I know this video is kind of different than what I usually do, but I really love this story. I read his entire book, House to House. If you get a chance, check it out. Task and Purpose out.